Welcome to the fastest daf in town. Today we're on Masechtas Gittin daf Yud Gimel. We're going to begin on Yud Gimel Amud Aleph by the new Mishnah. Says the Masnis. Ha'omer, the man says, Tenu get zel ishti. Give this get to my wife. So Rashi right off the bat says Garsinan b'masnisin v'lo Garsinan tain shilo misaris liad shliach b'chayev. So there's a question exactly what was being said over here, and whether or not he actually said Tenu get zel ishti, which again it's over here. The Bach says it's the lashon of Tenu and not tain. So what's the difference? Shalo masram liyad shliach b'chayev, which means the get was never given over to the shliach in his lifetime. Lefikach l'nechlu chachamim b'davar, we're going to see that no one argues in this situation. Loimer shemishan rishayna zachal hashliach le'evan liyosam mishocher. And yet, on yesterday's and two a lot ago, we were learning a machlokas whether or not we say an eved, if a shliach takes the document, do we say it's a schos or it's a chayiv? According to Rameir and the Tanakama, they're chayiv, how we look at that, and therefore whether or not the adon, the master, can retract, can be choser. That's because at least it went into the hands of the shliach over there. Here, it's talking about that it never even made it to the hands of the shliach. So even the chachamim agree that it's nothing, as we're now going to see the Mishnah. So again, they don't argue when it comes to a woman anyway, because it certainly is a chov. It's something which is a negative for her to get divorced. But the Mishnah continues, Shtar shecher zel avdi, same thing when it comes to a person who makes this declaration, umeis, but he died before the shliach even got it, lo yitnu lach misa. We say that this get does not work, says Rashi, de gita lo havi adamato yadeh. It's not a get until it's actually into her hands. She's not divorced. So v'chi matil yadeh, if she would eventually get it, hameisle, he already died. And meshachrer upakale reshuse. And it's the same thing when it comes to the dinim of being freed. So even though, let's say, eventually he gets this document, it's not a valid document, because you can only divorce your wife, or you're only able to free your slave while you're still alive. But if the document was never given over even to the shliach, so then it's not going to work. And then it says, interestingly enough, Tenu mana liish ploni, if instead, in a similar situation, you said this regarding money, give $100 to such a person, umeis, and the person died before the document was given over, gittin lach misa. For some reason, when it comes to this, it's different. And we say that it will work, even though the document was not given over. But when we're dealing with dinim mamnas, when it comes to monetary issues, there is a difference. Why? So the Gemara is going to explain now. Rabbi Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marsa, he said in Mishmei Rav, in the name of Rav, it's only if it's all wrapped up and put into a corner. What does that mean? So Rashi says like this. This is talking about mana. The Katani Masnisin, when our Mishnah said that you can still give this money over even after the guy died, is b'sibor nu'menachin hamois askinan. It's talking where it was already clearly delineated that this was the money that was going to be given, and it was all tied up and was in a corner. So it was clear when he said, give this money, and he's referring to this specific money, therefore it's allowed to be given. We say it works. Even though it wasn't actually, there was no star that was given over, it doesn't make any difference. But since it was all wrapped up, so that already is enough, even based on his Amira alone. So the Gemara says, what exactly is going on over here? Are we talking about that we're talking about this guy's healthy when he said this? So kisibur in my havi. So the fact that it was wrapped up, that doesn't help. Halomashach, you didn't do mashicha. Says Rashi, matnois bari, when it comes to a gift of a healthy person, b'metaltalin yachol achshaboy. When it comes to something which is metaltalin, a movable object, he could always retract. Ad sheyimshech, until the person he was going to give it to actually took it and pulled it and did a kinyan. V'yarshu nami matzil meheder bei. And therefore, when it comes to when the guy dies, so the Yarshim should also still be able to retract. If you hold that it's not a requirement to listen to the words of the mace, there's a machlokas whether or not mitzvah can be mace. So if you don't necessarily, you say we don't necessarily hold that it's a mitzvah, we have to listen to every mace. So the Yarshim could also retract if Mashiach wasn't done. So then, what does it mean that in our sefer we're talking about that's Gittin lachar misa? There was no Mashiach done, so why can't even the Yarshim retract? So that's why it's difficult to say it's a bari. The el b'shchimira. So maybe we're talking about the man in question was dying and then he died. So when it comes to a shchimira, we have an important rule, as we're going to see in a second, that my area siborn ki yantzibur nami. It shouldn't make any difference, even the money wasn't tied up, even if it wasn't specific, because the hakaimelon we know that we paskin in many places. The divri shchimira kechsuvin kamsurin damu. We make an exception when it comes to a shchimira because he's dying. We don't require him to have to do all these things of having it written down and kinyanim. Whatever he says, that in itself we will listen to. So, mamanashach. If we're talking about a bari, it should never work. It should not be a kinyan because the person could always retract. Even the yarshim could retract. If we're dealing with a shchimira, so then why is he saying it's only a situation where the money is all wrapped up a Karen Zavis in a corner? Even if it's not. We always listen to a shchimira anyway. So what is the case of our Mishnah? So Reb Zvid will own bari. Really, we are talking about a bari. So the question is, okay, so we're talking about bari, so then there shouldn't be a kinyan. Rav Huna Omer Rav, the Omer Rav Huna Omer Rav, he says in the following, Manali biyadcha. So a person says there's $100 in play. So in other words, you owe me $100. So A owes B money. Tenula Pliny. So he says, you know what? Instead of you giving it to me, because I actually happen to owe this other guy, give the money directly to him. So instead of you giving me 100, then I'm going to turn around and give him 100. It's much easier just to go, you know what? Just cut me out, the middleman, and give this guy 100. This way, it's really, you owe me 100, you don't owe me anymore. I owe that guy 100, so now that you paid him, so I'm not going to owe him anymore. So, b'mamet shlashtan kana, the famous mamet shlashtan, this works. In other words, it has to be just done in the presence of all three. So, what does that have to do with our case? So, Rashi says, mafarish taima born be'inan. The whole notion of being able to do this thing of money going, instead of from A to B and then B to C, A going directly to C, is only if that money was already tied up. Says Rashi, Diksav Reb Zvid, because Reb Zvid is of the opinion that he holds that Lo Amarav Kana El Bipikadain. The only time that this whole thing works is only when we're dealing with a Pikadain. Because when it comes to a pikadon, since I'm safeguarding it, I'm holding it, so therefore it's considered, it's here. I'm not allowed to spend it. It's a pikadon. I'm holding it as a safekeeping. So you can be kind it wherever it is. Which, on the other hand, if we're talking about a milva, as the Gemara in Kedushin elsewhere says, milva hoitzah nisna. So when it comes to a milva that is not here, it's like it's spent. So you wouldn't be able to do this. So the chiddush of our Mishnah is talking about this particular situation. And we're talking about a situation with a bari, that even though normally you have to do Mashiach in order for there to be a kinyan, however, b'maimid shlashtan will say that this will work, because what's being said over here is tanu manul manul ish ploni. It's referring to this case where instead of you giving me my pikadon, give it to this guy because I owe him. I have to give him a pikadon or something like that, right? So therefore, in that situation, it will work, even though there was not an actual mishicha, there was no kinyan done. But we allow this as an efficient form of transactions. So therefore, that's what our Mishnah is talking about. That's answer number one. Rav Papa Omer no, only b'shchimira. Rav Papa says, no, we're talking about a case of a shchimira. So 1 second, if it's a case of a shchimira, so you shouldn't need the money to be all tied up. Anyway, he's kaina because we said divrei shchimira is ksum k'masurim. Rav. It's like another statement of Rav. What's that? If, let's say we're talking about our Mishnah, then a person says, yes, give $100 to this guy. It depends on the language of what he says. Maybe he says, manazeh, this money, like the money which is all tied up. It's very clear he's referring to a specific amount of money, and certain specific monies, nice and mana, then in fact you could give it. However, mana stam, then nice. If it's mana stam, if all he says is, yeah, give the guy $100, give him $100. Is it the $100 here or is it $100 there? We don't know what he's referring to. Ein noisnin, we do not give it because chashin and shema money cover kaimer. Maybe in his mind he's referring to the $100 that's buried somewhere in the backyard that no one's ever going to find. Maybe that's why he was referring to the $100, and therefore we're not going to give it to him, even by a shchimira. And therefore our Mishnah is telling us this chiddush, that when it comes to a shchimira, even though normally whatever he says we listen to, that's only if he says this money. But if he says it stam, we're not going to, because we're concerned that maybe his mindset was referring to other monies that we don't know where it is. The halacha is that we don't pass like that, which is interesting because that's what we're saying. The second teretz is the halacha is we're not concerned of kfura. So look at Rashi. Shema mana cover yeshlo b'karka hu diyoivle. That's what he gave to him. We're not chayish that, and therefore it sounds like. You obviously have to look into the Mefarshim a little bit deeper. It sounds like that means that the reality is it doesn't make any difference. Even if you would just say manastam, it would work, which means that the halacha is not like this whole statement of Rav Yitzchak bar Shmuel bar Marta, that it has to be siburin. So that's why it's hard to really say that our Mishnah is talking about that second case of a shchimira, because we just ended up saying, well, the halacha is not like that anyway. Okay. Rav Papa is my temel Rab Zvid. So why doesn't Rav Papa, who gave the second answer, why doesn't he hold like Rab Zvid, that we're talking about a bari, and it's the case of Ma'amad Shlashtan? So as the Gemara continues on Yud Gimel Amid Beis, the reason why he doesn't want to say like Rab Zvid is Ksavar Rav Papa ki Amar Rav lo shana b'milva lo shana b'bikadoin, because he's saying, our case is a case of a bari and it's b'ma'amad shlashtan, but it has to be that it's a case of a pikadon, like it's here, like the money's all tied up, but not by a milva. He holds no, it also by a milva it works, which means a milva the money's not here. So therefore, you wouldn't be able to establish that his case is talking about a situation where the money's tied up and it's here, because he wouldn't require that when it comes for Ma'amad Shlashtan to work. Look at Rashi. Even though it's different money from the original money that you gave, nitna v'ein be'ein, it's not the same. Hilkach lo be'in and siburin. Therefore, it doesn't need to be tied up. Even Ma'amad Shlashtan kamayri masnisan. If our Mishnah is talking about Ma'amad Shlashtan, it wouldn't have to establish the cases that the money is all tied up. Okay. Fine. So that's why he doesn't hold like him. So Rabbi Zvid might tell him, why does he say the case of a shchimira? So lo mituk masnisa b'shchimira. Why doesn't he establish that? Because it says, Ha'emer tinu get zel ishti. I want to give this get to my wife. Yishtar shecher zel avdi, or the shtar shecher to my Evid Umeis, and then the guy dies. Who said, so I'm sorry, it doesn't work, because the guy died before he gave the shtar over. Now, Taima Demes. Mashma, the only reason why it doesn't work is because he died. Ha Machayim, but let's say he was actually alive. It's Mashma. If this in case was actually a guy of a Shchimira, then Noisnin. So this is the problem. If he's alive, again, it's Mashma, this Shchimira must have said Tanu, or else you can't give this get to her if all he said was Kisvu, not Tanu. But we see maybe not the case. Okay, so Taima the Omer Tanu, as we said, the only reason why our mission is because he said Tanu. Hello Omer Tanu. If he didn't say that, a Noisnin. then he wouldn't give it. But I'll prove to you, when it comes to a case of a shchimir, why does our Mishnah say the case of tenu, basically, is the question. Because, why? Again, the Mishnah says it doesn't work. You can't give this get because he died, which is mashma. If he didn't die, it would work. Why? It must be because he said tenu. But if we're talking about the case of a shchimira, he doesn't have to say the word tenu. Even by a case of a shchimira, we're lenient. Did not. Originally we said if a person is going out with chains, which basically means the guy's going to be killed. The Yomi says kisvu get ishti. Now he probably wanted to give the get also, but kisvu is not enough. Write it, big deal. You can write a get, but if it's not given over to her, it's nothing. So his declaration may have been no, just write it and that's it. But the fact that he was going out, it's something which is very clear based on what's happening, that we could figure out that probably he wants his wife to get the divorced, so she's not going to have any issues with Yibum. So we're going to give it and we're going to write it. We'll write it and give it to her. Says Rashi, so why didn't he say the right thing? He should have said the right thing because he's bal nafsho. He knows he's about to die. So little gamar milse. He just basically wasn't thinking straight to be able to say everything properly. His intention was really to have it given. So when it comes to a person who's about to die, or about to be sentenced to death, so the din is that we give it, even though all he said was kisvu. This is Gemara mentioned many times. Also someone who is a mafarish, someone who's going out to the sea, which is extremely dangerous. If you only said kisvu, again, he's busy thinking about his travels. We'll also give her the get. Or a person's going out on a caravan, so Rashi says a lamidbar, to the desert, very dangerous. So he knows that he's going to may not make it. These are places in which you have to be bent and goimel because it's so dangerous when you go out there. And this is the key words. Masukan, Rashi says, is a shchimira. Also, when it comes to a shchimira, so what do we see? The fact that it says af masukin, a shchimira, which is shchimira, we don't require the lashon of tenu. So why does our Mishnah say the word tenu? It must be we're not talking about a case of a shchimira. So again, our Mishnah says it's not a good get because he died before the get was given to the shliach. Mashma, if he was still alive, it would work. Only because he said tenu. But why does he have to say tenu? If it's a shchimira, you don't have to say tenu. Okay. Maskiful Rav Hashi uman man nemalon the masnis and Rav Shimon Shazurihu. How do we know that our Mishnah is in accordance to Rav Shimon Shazuri? Because that's what we're saying. Rav Shimon Shazuri Omer Afa Masukin. So the whole question is only if you hold like Rav Shimon Shazuri. Dilma Rabbanani. Maybe it's like the Rabbanan. And the Rabbanan hold that a Masukin, a Shchimira, does have to say Tenu. So maybe our Mishnah is not like Rav Shimon Shazuri at Das Yachin. Maybe he holds like the Tanakama. Okay. Goof. Getting back to what we said before. Omer Rav Huna Rav. So Rav Huna said in the name of Rav the following. Manali biyadcha. So you have some money in your hands, and the question is only by Pikadon or also by Milva. Tani Lapoini, give it another guy, but Mamad Shlosh and Kon. All three people are present at works. So Omer Rav, Mastabra Mil say, we're going to try to understand this whole case of Mamad Shlosh. We need to get a good reason behind this. We're going to see maybe there is no reason. But Mamad Shlosh and Kon. So Omer Rav, Mastabra Mil said Rav, it's logical, probably when Rav said this din, that this works, is definitely be Pikadon. As we said before, because a Pikadon is something that is here. So maybe it works only because it's present. Of a milva, but when it comes to a loan, which milva hides on this, no. I swear to you that's not true. Omer Rav feel of a milva. Itmar. Nami Omer Shmuel Mishmei the Levi milva libiyadcha tinul pointy but mamashloshten kana. It works. The time of my so remember nasik lo b'shas matan mois. It's just as though he said b'shas matan mois when he was giving over this money, as though he said, quote, Shabbat nalach lididach, that I owe to you ulchol de'asu machmasach, and anyone that comes from you. So it works based on this original understanding at the time of the loan. So it doesn't matter, even by a case of a milva, that's the reason. It's because it's based on this mindset that any person that comes along later on, I can owe that money to as well. And therefore, that's the reason why Mamash Shloshna works. One second. If you want to tell me that's the case, what happens if, let's say, we're dealing with someone who was born after the loan started? This whole kinyan, I will give it to anyone who is also owed, connected to you, but those people have to be alive and for it to be a davar sheba'olam. But over here, if we're dealing with someone who's born after the loan, the lo havi b'shas matan mois hachinami the lo kanu. You're going to tell me it doesn't work, but why would we make that distinction? So, okay, but that's actually machlokas. Because that's not true really, because even according to Rameir, who says that it does work, even though the thing is not around, or let's say this person wasn't born yet, this is the person acquiring it has to be in the world. Says Rashi, if a person sells fruits of a tree, mitsudasi, whatever is going to come up in my net, the fish that's in my net. So it didn't happen yet. But ki makna adam shishna ba'olam. It's at least it's something in the world. This is something which is literally the person wasn't born yet. So maybe it works when it comes to paros. There's a tree. You're here. I'm here. The person, the kaina, the makna, everyone's here. But there's some small detail that the fruit hasn't grown yet. So maybe in that case, Rabbi Meir is lenient and says, okay, you can be makna shalom. However, here the person who's acquiring it isn't even alive. So that even he wouldn't allow it. So how do we understand this? Okay, before we go weiter, question TA 11. This is the only question we're going to have in this whole daf. Madua ein loymar, the time of the Maimed Shloshtan, misham nasik lo. It's like you said, mishtabna loch, that I owe you l'chol da'asi machmasach, anyone who comes after you. Afterwards, as we said, therefore it works based on the original understanding of the time of the loan. Umay hamaskana, the time of Maimed Shloshtan. Okay, so at least we got this part. We'll see the maskan in a second. But TA 11. De'im kain behikna l'no yuladim. Someone who wasn't born yet, the lo havi b'shas matan mos, who wasn't alive at the time of this transaction, lo hani, and they wrote in parentheses, he's not going to hold of this. So the question is, why? How does it work? How do we understand the concept of Ma'amad Shloshtan? It can't be the situation of this original stipulation, because we never made a distinction by Ma'amad Shloshtan whether the person who's getting it has to be alive at the time of the original loan. Ella Omer Ravashi. So on this, the Gemara says, okay, fine. B'hahi hana. We're talking about the following. This loan, deka mishtanyale, that you're changing, bein milva yishana, lemilva chadasha, between an old loan and a new loan, gomer mishabi nafshe. He was mishabed himself. So the loiva, the borrower, one who borrowed the money, is now happy to exchange debt to the new person, since the new outstanding debt, it's a new outstanding debt, and not a long time debt, which gives you less leeway. So the reason why it works is because the lov is going to be very happy about this situation. Says Rashi, and hai malva, this lender, lagabi hai milvi yashana milva chadasha v'nochel lidchais he piroin zaman aruch. He's happy to have it pushed off, basically. Okay, because again, if we're dealing with a loan, his loan, and you're going from A to C, there's obviously different zmanim of when each person borrowed the money. So therefore, because there was a difference in the time of the loan, so therefore they will be happy about this change. Okay, again, so the lova is now happy to exchange debt to the new person. He's happy it's going to go from A to C. Since this new outstanding debt, it's a new outstanding debt and not a long-term debt, a long-time debt. So he's happier that it's shorter term. So on this, Omerle Huna Marbarita of Nechemi or Rabashi, so El Miyata could go into Hani the Bebar are El Yoshiv, these people who were very, very particular if we're dealing with this second new malva, the kafte v'shakli alter, they demand their money immediately. They don't want to wait. They don't wish to delay. So hachinami delay kanu. So maybe it doesn't work in that situation. Says Rashi, adam chazak she'enu mamtin. He doesn't want to wait. So then it wouldn't work. So it's only because the from A to C, this other person is like, okay, fine, it's all right if it's you pay me a little bit later. But what if you're dealing with the new second malva who is very particular? So maybe it wouldn't work. You can't say that for some people it works and for some people it doesn't work. It has to be a blanket statement. So this is, we're going to stop, but this is actually one of the three situations where there's actually no actual understanding. There's no complete understanding as to the reason why we say Mamash Lashon works. It does work, but there is reason perhaps to say that it's illogical that it should work, but nonetheless, the Chachamim still established that it is considered to be a proper kinyan, again, giving, instead of from A to B, B to C, from A to C. Adka.